Welcome to day 2. This is the most fun day because this is where you get to get your hands dirty and get your kitchen dirty and then clean it all up and do your fermentation. This is the day of fermenting your dough. So if you have never done fermentation, you'll see today how it's alchemy. It changes what you have, which is dry flour, starter, and some liquid into this amazing dough. And you'll see the dough transform throughout the day. So it's a really cool process. What you'll need is a big mixing bowl, and you'll need some high quality salt. I like to use sea salt, but you can use any salt that you want, but it's high quality. You need filtered water. You need your starter that you left overnight on the counter. And you need your kefir and the 2 flours, the einkorn and the bread flour that comes in your package. And you need a scale and the recipe. All right, so the most important thing is to start it in the morning. So what you're doing is you're making the dough today, and you want to start in the morning, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. And even if you have to do this in the morning and then go to work, that's totally fine, because the longer you let it sit at room temperature, the better your bread's going to be, the better taste and also better quality and more digestible. So I like to do this in the morning, and then I let it sit until about 4 o'clock. You can go to work, you can come back at 4 or 5, it can be 8 hours, it could be 5 hours, it could be 6 hours. You want minimum of 3 hours though sitting at room temperature, okay? So let's get started. I like to start with the mixing bowl, turn the scale on, and you're going to put it in grams. Put the mixing bowl on the scale and always tare it. So after every ingredient, you always want to tare and hit it to 0. Okay, that's most important. I start with the sea salt because if you forget the salt, say you get to the end and you forget the salt, you're not gonna have bread tomorrow. So sea salt is the most important aspect to this whole process. You need salt to make bread. Okay, so we have 16 grams. So I just like to dump it in until the scale says 16. There we go. And then filtered water, so tare it so it comes to 0. Filtered water, 290 grams. And again, if you're a few over, not a big deal. Okay, tare that. I like to do the salt and the liquids first, just to ensure that I don't forget anything. The flour is pretty obvious. The winner, this is my favorite, this is my baby, as most of you know if you know me by now. This is my kefir. You're going to put 290 grams of the kefir in. And I like the hibiscus. You can use any flavor, but with your package, you're going to get the hibiscus. So 290 grams. And this will make your bread extra creamy, extra fluffy. Oh, we went to 297, and that's fine. Okay, then we tare it back to 0. Now, the starter that you left overnight, mine exploded on the counter. If yours did too, not a big deal. But you can see, if you want to get a close-up shot, you can see all the bubbles. It expanded and then it went back down. So now we know it's ready. And you need 160 grams of the starter. So I just pour this in. You can see it's pretty thick, pretty gooey. 160. There we go. All right. Now with your starter, let's just talk about this for a moment before we move on. You have a little bit of starter left, and you have the starter that you put in the refrigerator that we took out yesterday, okay? We took out, it was the starter discard. Bring that out, and you're going to, instead of throwing it in the garbage like most recipes call for, or making crackers or something, you're gonna put it back into the starter that you just left overnight. That's there because it really is just another starter. So you can add to it and with this starter, by the way, this recipe is 2 loaves. So what you're doing right now is you're making 2 loaves. And in your package, you have enough flour and enough kefir to make 4 loaves. So you have to measure the flour out pretty correctly here so that you have some left over for your next bread. Now the starter, you have enough for the next bread. So you want to put the cap on, and then this goes into the refrigerator until you make your next bread, say a week from now or 2 weeks from now. Again, you take it out of the refrigerator and you do day 1, starting with the feeding the starter. Okay, so that goes in the refrigerator. This little jar you can just keep on the side, you know, clean it, put it on the side. Okay, so we have all the liquids, and now we tear it, and we get to the einkorn flour. I love this flour so much. It's so beautiful. You can even see it's got even like some of the husks still in it. It's very wholesome. I need 90 grams. This is already measured, so I'm just gonna dump that out and then tear it. And then we have the bread flour. This is organic bread flour, and we need 770 grams, and this is already measured. All right, there we go. Now it's time to get messy. So take your mix off the scale. You can turn your scale off, put your recipe away, and then you have your bowl in front of you. Now you're gonna mix everything together with your hands preferably, because that adds to the biome, it adds to the microbes in your dough. If you use a utensil or a mixer, that's fine too, but I prefer hands, and plus it's more intimate with your food. So what I like to do is just start slowly, and I kind of fluff it up. Fluff, start mixing with my hands. And then once things start mixing, I do some squeezing. And this process takes a few minutes because you want to get everything combined without spilling it over, like I just did. And again, this gets a little messy. Your hands are going to be messy, but it's really fun. And if you have children, this is a great step for them to take part in. But the goal here is to get all the flour mixed into the bowl. I'm not kneading, I'm just mixing. I'm doing a little squeezing action with my hands. And then I start picking it up and turning it so I get the flour that's stuck at the bottom of the bowl. All right, and you're gonna notice it's very sticky. Part of that is just because it's not coagulated yet, and part of it is that einkorn flour is kind of a wet flour and it becomes sticky. All right. So this is what it looks like. You want to lift it up, make sure all the flour is taken up. See, there's no more flour left in my bowl. And now I scrape it off my hands. You could use a scraper. I prefer, again, just being really intimate with my food. So I just take it off. Whoops, forgot to turn my phone off. Okay, so you'll have some stickiness, some dough left. Try to get as much off as possible, but you're gonna have some. Now, this is what your dough looks like. It doesn't look pretty. Looks like a mess, right? It's okay. Because what you're going to see is, in a few hours, this will look a little bit more together, less stringy, less wet, because the microbes from the kefir and from the starter are going to start their fermentation process. They have a lot of protein, a lot of gluten to eat, and they're really happy right now, and they're gonna be even happier in a couple of hours. So you're done with this step. What you do is you take a cloth, paper towel I use, just so no flies get in, and I place it on top, and then I let it sit on the counter. I go and do my day, and when I come back, you know, I'll probably in 6 hours, it's very flexible, but minimum of 3, you could even do 8 hours. At room temperature, just let it sit. And then when we come back, we're going to do a series of 4 stretches. So this is a no-knead bread, which is awesome. You're not gonna sit there and slave. You're just gonna do some gentle stretches 4 times, and then we place it in the fridge, and you're done. Overnight, tomorrow, day 3, we make the bread, and we eat a lot of the bread. So I'll see you later to show you how to stretch your dough. All right, so we're back. I let my dough rise for 7 hours, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like. But for the first stretch, what you're gonna need is some flour of your own. So this is not the flour that you'll use for the bread. For next time, you're gonna have to have some flour of your own. And that is just to sprinkle on the counter and just for your hands. So it doesn't need to be a lot. But this is what my dough looks like now, 7 hours later. And if you remember what it looked like before, it was about half of this. So it's really expanded, and it's kind of smoothed out a little bit. You can see some little bubble pockets, and it's kind of airy. So those are all really good signs of good fermentation. If your bread hasn't risen or expanded, then don't worry about it. Sometimes it takes 1 or 2 tries to get a bread to really expand. The microbes are very particular, and they're used to my environment. They're used to my microbes, and so changing environments, changing hands, all of that may throw them off a little bit. But don't worry about it, because you know, after a few times, you're going to get a bread that really expands, and it'll be delicious either way. Okay. So here we go with the first stretch. Now I told you we're going to stretch the bread 4 times. This is the first one. I'm going to take some flour and put it on your counter. It's going to be pretty big here because we've got a lot of dough in there. And then I also take it in my hands like that. And then the dough on your first stretch is going to be pretty sticky. It's not going to be all stuck together, so I just use my hands, and you can see there's some stuck in the bowl, so I lift that up. You know, again, like nothing's really perfect about this whole process, and that's the fun of it. So here we are with your first dough, your first stretch. Okay, so this is what I do, and you can always get your own technique. I stretch it like a pizza, like that, and then I fold it, and then I stretch this side, and I fold it like that, and then I go again, stretch, and you see with every stretch, it gets a little bit more tight. You might have to add more flour. This is pretty sticky. The einkorn flour gets very sticky, so you might have to add. Don't worry about adding too much flour. So stretch, stretch, okay? Here's a technique that I like. After it gets really tight and where you can't lift it up and have it stretch, this is what I like to do. I take one hand and I stretch it, and then I bring it around like that. Okay, I take my right hand, stretch it, bring it around. One more time, I take my right hand, stretch it, bring it around. The first stretch is going to be wet and sticky. And part of that is just because the gluten has been broken down, and when you stretch it, you sort of invigorate it again. You invigorate all the proteins, okay? So that's it, maybe 5 or 6, 7 stretches. Pull it, bring it around, stretch it up, fold it. And then what you wanna do is you're gonna put it back in the bowl. So what I do is I put quite a bit of flour on the sides and on the bottom, okay? And then take this, scoop it up, put it in the bowl. If you wanna get some extras here, tack it on top, and voila. That's what the bread looks like. You can see how it's smoother now, not so many air pockets. It's getting a little stronger in the proteins, so that's good. And then I cover this up and I let it sit for about 15, 20 minutes. Again, time-wise, not so important. You just want to get in 4 stretches before you put it in the refrigerator overnight. So if you have something to do, you go out to dinner, you know, you're back 2 hours later, don't worry, stretch it. The second time, make sure you get 4 stretches in. But I'm gonna wait about 15 minutes and do my second stretch. So I'll see you in about 15 minutes. We are back for stretch number 2. Let me show you what my dough looks like right now. So after the first stretch, we have smoother surface. It's a little bit more together, but still pretty wet. So let's take some flour, put it on the counter, and get your hands floured. Okay, and again, I'm gonna take my nails, take my hands, and bring it out of the bowl here. I get every last drop in there. Okay, then you could also flour the top of the dough as well. So once again, I grab it and I stretch it like a pizza, fold it, and then stretch here. So here's my technique. Take it, stretch, come around, put it down, stretch, down. And every now and then I flatten it, stretch it, and down. You want to try to stretch it to the max, even if it feels like it's tearing, still try to stretch it to the max. And what you should feel is that it's getting harder and harder to stretch. It takes more muscle to stretch. Okay, one more. So I'm going to do about 5 or 6 times. And that's about it. And again, just repeat from previous. A little bit of flour. Flour the edges. You want it to come out easily. Like that. Scoop it up. And voila, put it in there. That's what the bread looks like now. And we cover it. Another 15 to 20 minutes for stretch 3. See you soon. Okay, stretch number 3. We're getting there. So, same process. I'm just showing you guys how the dough changes with time and with stretching. Get your hands floured. And then here is stretch number 3. You can see it changing. And now it's more of a ball. See how I couldn't lift it up before? But now I can lift it up as a ball, but I'm still gonna just turn it over and dump it. See how it comes out as one piece now. So that's another good sign. I'm just gonna flour the top and flatten it out a little bit, and then I take this, I stretch and turn. Stretch and turn. Stretch and turn. Okay. You can also find your own technique. I feel like this works the best. This is my own technique. This is what really gives the dough the bread a lot of air pockets. Makes the sourdough light and crusty. So you'll feel like it's really hard. I mean, I can barely even stretch it now. That's as far as I can go. So that's that. That's all it takes. Super easy. Way better than a kneading bread recipe. Okay, so flour the bowl. Pick it up. Toss it in there. And then cover it another 15-20 minutes. And we'll do stretch 4. And then at the end of stretch 4, I'll show you what to do. We'll stick it in the fridge, and then you're done for the day. See you in a bit. All right, so stretch number 4. This is our final stretch. And we'll do the same thing. Put flour on the counter, and then some flour in your hands. And take this out. Falls out very easily now. And I'm gonna just do a little bit of flour on top. Like that. Now it's stretching time. So the 4th and final one gets a little tricky because it's tight by now. The proteins are tight. You just do exactly what we did before. And if you put enough flour down, it should just glide really easily. The first few times I made bread, I was resisting to put extra flour on the bread, but boy, the extra flour really makes it easier. See how much I can barely stretch it. So good. All right, we are good. A little bit more flour on my hands. Just make it into a nice floured dough. Floured ball, I mean. Okay, so now this is 2 loaves of bread, remember. So what we're gonna do now is you'll need 2 bowls. Now, I'm going to use proofing baskets. You don't need to use proofing baskets. You can use the same bowl that you stored it in today, plus another bowl. And you can store it in anything really, but bowls so that it can expand and rise are really the best. And I'm gonna do proofing baskets. I like these because of the linen here. I take a knife, I take a sharp knife, and I just slice it in half, like that. And I've got 1 ball. I'm just shaping it a little bit, not necessary to fully shape it yet. I'll show you the shaping tomorrow. Okay, but they're just gonna get a little bit out of shape just as they proof overnight. Okay, so then I'm gonna take this. I don't need any flour because I've got this linen, but for you, if you're gonna use a regular bowl, then you wanna flour the bottom and the sides, okay? So you'll pick this up and drop it in there. Pick that up, toss it in there. That's what it looks like. And what you want to do is take some saran wrap or whatever you want to cover it with. You can take a cloth and put a rubber band around it. Just something to make it a little bit more airtight than rather just an open vessel. Okay, so you'll cover these with whatever you want. I usually do saran wrap. And then I put them in the refrigerator, and they stay in the refrigerator overnight until tomorrow morning, where we begin baking the bread. And that is the best part. I can't wait for you guys to try your own baked bread. You'll never buy bread again. So enjoy your evening, place them in the fridge, and I'll see you tomorrow.